Hey, I'm Steve Rudzinski, and welcome to the Silver Spotlight Films 5-year timeline. I'm going to take a few minutes here to walk you through what led to The Survivors. Now, many years ago, I started making films and web shows, Choose a Crowd, Basic Slaughter, VG Spoofs. Of all of them, the only one that was any sort of success with audiences and sales was the Wolfster Double Feature, which had the introduction of Dave Collins, the Wolfster himself. But before I took filmmaking seriously, it was basically a hobby. I don't really count those. After taking a short break after VG Spoofs, I buckled down to do a short for real and actually take it seriously, so 2011 is when we saw the release of The Slasher Hunter, which I later realized was my first real movie and the birth of Silver Spotlight Films and the entire Silver Spotlight universe. Slasher Hunter was just a 30-minute standalone short, but even though it was a parody, there was actually a lot of world building in there. Now, 2012, 1 year later, is when I released Everyone Must Die. EMD was my attempt to make a no-nonsense slasher movie where the only things we focused on was the kills and the characters. Not the killer at all. It was made for a low budget, but it was a solid entry into the slasher genre, in my humble opinion, that raised a lot of questions about the killer, or should I say, killers. Yes, spoilers, the twist of the film is that there were multiple killers, but we never saw who they were, where they came from, or why they were doing this. That was to come later. That wasn't the plot of Everyone Must Die. Where they came from, the killers themselves, that had nothing to do with the story that was being told in Everyone Must Die. And the first reveal of something greater actually came after the credits.
Lawnmower, huh? You think you're the only survivor out there? Well, you become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet.
What are you talking about?
You beat a highly trained, specialized killer. How do you think you survived that night?
What do you mean?
There's a lot more of those killers out there. A lot more. And I'm here to offer you a job. A good, noble job. One that pays so much fucking money that your wife shouldn't leave you. But she does anyways.
Who are you?
I'm Carl Winslow, Chief of the Slasher Hunters, and I'm here to tell you about the Survivor Gene Initiative.
Yep, Will, from the beginning of Everyone Must Die, the only survivor of the film, met Chief Winslow from the Slasher Hunter, which establishes a bigger universe. When I first wrote that scene, it was just as a joke, kind of as a parody of the after the credits scene from Iron Man, just as a laugh. But after I made and released the film, I realized that it was absolutely building up to much more. Now, in 2013, I released an independent tokusatsu called Super Task Force 1. That, however, takes place on Earth 2. That's a separate universe that doesn't have to do with these films or this story, so I'm mostly going to skip it, but know that it's there. Early in 2014, I released a 4-minute short called The Killer. It was about one of the killers from Everyone Must Die, first day on the job. It was a new killer, not one of the ones from the movie. It was someone else that joined the organization. It actually answered a few questions about the killers themselves, hinted at why they did it, and killed off Detective Jordan, who was one of the leftover characters from Everyone Must Die. But the short also featured the return of the Slasher Hunter, as well as a ton of Easter eggs in one of the last scenes. This one shot here shows that Dave Collins, the Wolfster, exists in this universe. Will is currently in training to be a Slasher Hunter, and it showed the first ever public hint of Duke, the villain from my upcoming feature, Carousel. And the final stinger of the short was Winslow deciding to recruit Captain Z for the team.
I don't know how you got here today, but if you can survive a time portal and fight demons, we can sure use you.
Later in 2014 saw the release of Captain Z and the Terror of Leviathan, a feature I was hired to write and direct by producer Zoltan Zilai. Now, early in pre-production, I asked Zoltan if Captain Z could take place in the same universe as my other films, which Zoltan gleefully agreed to. The film story is completely detached from anything else by me, except for a few things. During the last scene of the film, Glenn mentions his colleague Dave Collins, references that Dracula isn't that bad of a guy, Dracula and Wolfster was funny, and is also wearing a Super Task Force 6 t-shirt. Glenn also talks about a pocket dimension several times in the film, which is an infinite dimension holding the Leviathan. That is the same pocket dimension that Dr. Uzuki uses in Super Task Force 1 to house the weapons, armor, and giant robots. Which means that this pocket dimension could potentially be used as a bridge between universes in the future. And of course, the film has a post-credit stinger with Winslow recruiting Captain Z.
That was a close one.
And you didn't help?
Demons aren't really in our jurisdiction. My boys don't really deal with demons. They take care of other problems.
And who might ye be?
I'm Winslow, leader of the Slasher Hunters. Captain, you're a survivor. I need survivors.
Why? What do you want from me?
I'm building a team to take care of a growing problem.
Who's the team?
Then at the very end of 2014, early 2015, I released the found footage horror film Red Christmas. The character Tara spends the first half of the film torturing some poor guy named Bill before she finally murders him. At that point, someone breaks into her home to discover the mayhem. This was the wannabe slasher originally introduced in The Slasher Hunter, Axe. During the conversation between Axe and Tara, they discuss the rules of slashers, Axe's past, and Tara mentions what she does in order to avoid the slasher hunters. Axe ends up killing Tara and escaping into the night. The post-credits stinger for the first time is not Winslow recruiting someone for the survivors, but instead one of the killers attempting to recruit Tara for the killers. This is also the first time that we actually hear the voice of the leader of the killers.
I'm Norm, and well, she's dead. I guess one of her toys finally got the better of her. That's too bad. She would have been a perfect killer. Okay, leave. Touch nothing. We can't let anyone know we're in this area yet.
And here we are in 2016, 5 years after the Slasher Hunter premiered and we first met Slasher Hunter Prime and Winslow. Winslow's team is finally complete, and we will see the current status of slashers after the death of Frank. We will also conclude all of the open plots from Everyone Must Die. Will is tracking down the leader of the Killers for Revenge with the help of the original Slasher Hunter, Captain Z, and Wolfster. The Survivors is a weird film to describe, because it's a sequel to Everyone Must Die, with continuing the killers. It's a sequel to the Slasher Hunter, so it's also full of the same parody elements. And above all, it's a 5-year anniversary film of everything I've done so far. For the fans that have stuck with me from the start or discovered me along the way, I hope that this movie makes you laugh and remember some good times. And if this is somehow your first film of mine that you've seen, then I hope you enjoyed it enough to go back and see where this came from. Also, sorry for the spoilers. Thanks, everyone, and I hope to see you again in 5 years.